Yeah. Hang on.
Okay. All right, good. All right, guys, ready? Okay, so we're going to go over the 22 immutable laws of marketing today, but once I'm done talking, you guys are going to do a verification sort of testing where you're sort of evaluating your game and see where you're at and see if you're sort of ready to move on. And if you do think you're ready or to start building things, grab me or one of the TAs or a couple of them, and they'll sort of evaluate your game and see if you're ready or try to help you to get you ready for possibly next week. Cool. So the DT3 was due before class. Someone mentioned it's not due an hour before class, it's due just before class, so you're okay if you need to turn it in last minute. And then DT4 has been up, has been posted, so it's ready for you guys to start. Okay, so the 22 immutable laws. There's a PDF and Amazon version if you guys want it, and today we'll just go over sort of a quick summary. So the first two, they're kind of related to one another, and a lot of the laws are related to one another, so it can be kind of repetitive. But so the first one is law of leadership, and that's basically being the first at something, not being better at it, but to be the first. Everyone knows who the first person was to fly across the Atlantic, but no one really knows who the second one is. And then the next category is, or the next law is the law of category, and that's making a new category if you can't be first in something. And so for the most part, everyone knows who the third person was to fly across the Atlantic, and that's because she made a new category for herself. Ask if you guys have questions to interrupt me, and I can explain stuff in further detail or not. So those two are kind of related, so if you can't be first, make a new category so you can be first. The next one is the law of the mind, and it's better to be in the mind first than it is anywhere else. So start having a perception. People think of you when it comes to things. So in this case, Apple, they have a really easy name to remember. The example I used last class was Hewlett-Packard. They're sort of a long name. I know people refer to them as HP now, but their longer name is harder to come by, where Apple is sort of simple and easy to mind. So when you think of maybe computers or music technology, they'll pop in your mind first before someone else. The law of perception. The law of perception is to be perceived better than without actually any sort of data behind it. So a big one is using name brand products compared to generic. A lot of people assume name brand products are better just because they're from a large company that's successful rather than maybe a generic type, but in reality they have the exact same components or ingredients that go into it. And then the law of focus. The law of focus is basically owning a word. The example up here is Federal Express for overnight shipping, but what's probably more relatable is Amazon Prime. When people think of free shipping and quick shipping, they think of Amazon Prime for the most part. So owning that word when you want to buy a product and have it come quickly, people will think of the word Prime and then they'll go to Amazon to purchase that. Is everyone good so far? That's kind of boring. But so the law of exclusivity is two companies can't own the same word. It's sort of related. So if another company were to try to use the Prime word for shipping, you already in your mind have Amazon up there, so you won't think of the secondary company. So it's sort of like not being, you have to be first in the category and not being second or trying to be better than someone because the consumers already know of Amazon. So they're not going to think of you as a company for quick shipping. The law of the ladder. The law of the ladder is sort of where your company falls on a rung within the ladder, so what sort of leader you are in a category. And in this case, it's better to be maybe third or fourth on a really big ladder. So if you look at medical devices and you think of Medtronic or Stryker, being on that ladder of their company and being farther down is maybe better than being on a ladder full of small like startup companies where you don't have as much reputation or products out there. So it's sometimes better to be lower than it is to be number one. Okay. So the law of duality. The law of duality is basically states that at the end it ends up being two major companies competing. In this case, it's like batteries is Everready or Duracell. Now, for the most part, it gets sort of bigger. It's more than a two-horse race, but it's basically sort of stating that you're sort of narrowed down to the top few companies are the ones you think of for products. Rather than just two, maybe it's three or four, but nonetheless, all your competitors end up dwindling out, and the successful ones are the ones at the end of competing. The law of opposite. The law of opposite is basically if you're within sort of the same realm or category, you shouldn't want to follow your competitor or try to be second place. You should try to be opposite in some way. So if it's either sort of presentation or something about the product that's different, you want to market towards being opposite so you stand out from your competitor. And then the law of division. The law of division basically states that if you have a category, it will eventually dwindle down into subcategories. So if you look at computers, when they first sort of came out, there was just one type of computer. There wasn't anything else, but now there's watches, cell phones, laptops, desktops. There's a lot more options out there. So your categories sort of split up and you sort of make new categories for yourself if you're the first one to come up with a portable computer and such like that. Okay, also sort of a side note, these sort of laws should end up somewhere in your game, either in your elevator pitch or somewhere in your documentation, so they're good to know and have because they're sort of developed for marketing, so it should be included in your game and your research and such like that. Okay. The law of perspective. The law of perspective is sort of how marketing takes place over time in the consumer's mind. So in this case, sort of marketing effects take place over time. So if you give a sale on a product, you sort of start training your customers that they can buy your product at a lower cost and paying it at the full sort of full price they're charging it. So if you continually give sales, no one will buy your product when there's not a sale. So sort of that effect takes place over time. The law of extension, or the law of line extension, is continuing on your product into different categories. So in this case, it's A1 steak sauce, and at one point they tried to move over to poultry. And the problem, they were unsuccessful because they were really good at making steak sauce, and they tried to expand their market for chicken, and it failed because they can't be good at everything. So it's better to be sort of exclusive in one area and be really good at it than it is to be sort of mediocre at like 3 or 4 different things. And this sort of relates into the law of sacrifice. The law of sacrifice states you just need to give up something. And in this case, so if you want to have a large product line, you'll have to give up sort of like targeting a market, and you'll have to be sort of mass producing for everyone. But if you want to target a market, you have to give up your product line. So in order to keep one of the other variables, you have to give up something, and no one can really be good at everything. There obviously are the exceptions, but so the law of attributes. The law of attributes states that sort of you need to market towards your one attribute that makes you different. So in this case, when you look at Crest, at one point Crest, they own cavities, so all the new incoming toothpaste companies can't market towards cavities because Crest already owns that. So they market towards like whitening or fresh breath or something along those lines that makes them different. So that does sort of relate into one of the other previous ones. But nonetheless, there's an attribute of your product that you need to emphasize and sort of market towards that instead. The law of candor. The law of candor is basically sort of an open, honest policy. Everyone will believe a company when they come out and say something bad or they did something wrong. But when someone comes out saying everything's great about their product, there's no issues, everyone takes it sort of with a grain of salt and won't believe them, or won't believe it to 100%. So it's better to sort of be open and honest than it is to sort of have really high ratings on yourself. The law of singularity. The law of singularity is basically that there's sort of one move that can take down a competitor in this case. So when you guys did your state-of-the-art review, you picked out these games and they had issues with them in some way or another. And your new game that you're making is focusing on those pitfalls. And that's what you want to do when you market, is you want to sort of look at what the other companies have done and why they're bad at it, and then prove how you are better than them to sort of separate yourself from the market. The law of unpredictability basically states that there's no way to sort of predict the future, but you can sort of do it in 2 different ways. You can either do sort of the science background. When you do your state-of-the-art review, you can kind of predict the market, what they're looking for, or you can sort of just go sort of taking the chance and hope that everyone's going to like your idea. So in this case, it's better to sort of do the science approach like they do with weather, even though the weather is wrong for the most part, even though there's a lot of science backing up their predictions. Okay, there's a couple more. Does anyone have any questions? Confused? I know it's a lot, but no? Okay, so law of success. The law of success is sort of a general trend that would happen in marketing, is basically when people are successful, they end up being arrogant, and then arrogance leads to failure. And what you sort of get is people who are successful, they aren't as objective as they were before when looking at the market. and sort of picking out ideas like what's wrong, what's missing. They sort of just tailoring towards the customer's needs rather than sort of identifying what the problems are and making them have a need for it. The law of failure. The law of failure is sort of related to the law of candor in that failure is accepted and expected. So it's better to sort of admit when you're wrong and sort of come forth and fix it, and it's good for your marketing, and people can see that when you do realize when something's wrong and you take the steps to fix it. The law of hype states that basically when a company is marketing a lot and spending a lot of money, that for the most part their product is doing bad. So the example here is, and I didn't know about it, but one time Coca-Cola, they wanted to change their name to New Coke, and they spent over $1 billion trying to advertise New Coke when they changed their formula in the 80s, I believe. And they wanted to call it New Coke, and they spent all this money, and obviously we don't have a New Coke, we still have Coca-Cola. So this is sort of example how all the money they spent, they should have had a really good product and everyone should have been buying it, but the name died out. So the last two here are the laws of acceleration. The law of acceleration states that, successful programs aren't built on fads, they're built on trends. So fads can come and go, and what you end up with if you build towards a type of fad, you end up with a lot of equipment that was only tailored for that one product, and a lot of distribution centers sort of tied up doing nothing. So it's better to be built on a trend where you can continually use your resources over again and actually make money off of them rather than spending money. And the last one is the law of resources, which just states that no good idea can get off the ground unless there's funding to back it. No matter how good the idea is, no consumers will get it in their mind that you have this really good product out there if there's not someone to fund it, to get in their ideas, to do the marketing. So marketing is really good, but you need the money to back it up. Okay, does anyone have any questions, concerns, or how it needs to relate to your game? No? Okay, so you're going to continue on with your verification testing. If you're not sure what you're sort of looking for, I'll leave this up at the end just so you can look through and compare it to your game. But basically the big thing is going to be, have you played your game? And if so, do you like it? Is it fun? So you're going to want to ask that question. And if you feel like it is fun and you have played it, you can come grab me or one of the TAs and we can look over your game and see if you're ready to start building parts. Okay, and that's just sort of the same thing when you go to building. So the DT4 is due before next class next week, and it is posted. And yeah, that's it. Okay. If not, you guys are good. Your boxes are over there.